This story happened 25 years ago. Kevin is now an adult, living in another state with his wife and kids. And yet, every night as he drifts off to sleep, he still remembers that scorching June in Wyoming. He was 6 years old at the time. It all started with the news of Uncle Bill's death, Kevin's father's older brother. Bill had lived alone in the town of Sheridan, in an old house by the forest. Nobody really knew him well. He rarely spoke to the family and often talked in riddles. He would disappear into the mountains for weeks at a time and send postcards with no return address. After his death, Kevin's father Brian received a letter from a local attorney inviting him to the reading of the will. Kevin's mom insisted they all go together. Kevin loved the outdoors, and this trip would double as a little family getaway. The drive took all day. The closer they got to Sheridan, the darker the sky became. Even though the forecast had promised clear weather, a strange fog rolled in and clung to the road. Kevin started feeling hot. His forehead was damp, his breathing uneven. He had a sore throat. By evening, Kevin's temperature had risen to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Uncle Bill's house looked like it had been abandoned for decades. 2 stories tall with Gothic trim and peeling paint. Behind it stretched a dense forest, silent and forgotten like a memory lost to time. Brian carried Kevin in his arms and brought him into the house. Kevin's mother followed carefully, stepping lightly on the rotted porch boards. Inside, the air was thick with dust, dampness, and something else, something spicy, almost sweet. Several rooms were locked, others stood empty. Only one room upstairs had a bed, a table, and a couple of wooden chairs. That's where they settled Kevin in for the night and called a doctor the next morning. Strep throat, the doctor said. Rest, stay in bed, and try not to move around too much. He glanced at Kevin's mother and added, "And don't let him get carried away with his imagination. Fevers can cause hallucinations." Kevin's mom watched over him, bringing him soup, medicine, and books she'd found in Uncle Bill's crumbling library. They were old tomes, leather-bound, yellowed pages with strange illustrations that looked like engravings. One of them was titled, "The Lost Paths Between Worlds." In the evening, Kevin heard a strange rustling sound coming from under the bed. He figured it was a mouse. Then, he remembered a piece of bread left over from dinner. He reached for it and leaned down under the bed. What he saw didn't make any sense. Under the bed, he didn't see a mouse, but some kind of strange creature. It wasn't very big. It had a huge mouth, sharp teeth, round eyes, long upright ears, and clawed fingers on its paws. The monster didn't seem evil. On the contrary, its gaze was almost childlike. "Don't be scared," it whispered. "I'm Toby. I've been here a long time, a very long time, and I like you." Kevin wanted to scream, but his inflamed throat could only manage a raspy wheeze. "I live alone," Toby continued. "Kids don't come around here very often. However, if you promise not to tell anyone about me, I'll come visit you every day. We'll play all kinds of games." Kevin nodded. At that moment, he was bored and lonely, and the fever was blurring the line between dreams and reality. The next morning, after his mom stepped out of the room, Toby slipped out from under the bed and suggested a new game. He invited Kevin to the far room. Across from the door was a wide window with no glass. "Imagine this," Toby said. "A giant trampoline down below. You jump out the window, and you'll float down, then bounce right back up like a little cloud." He gently nudged Kevin toward the window. However, just as Kevin reached the edge, something deep inside him, a primal instinct, sounded an alarm. "Number I can't," Kevin said. Toby's face twisted into a grin full of sharp teeth, but he held back. Offended, he disappeared. That evening, he returned to Kevin's room. "Want some candy?" he whispered. "I've got a special kind." He held out shimmering shards of glass, sparkling in the light of the setting sun. "Put one in your mouth and swallow it. Imagine the taste. It'll be like orange, or maybe strawberry." Kevin shook his head again, and just like that, Toby vanished beneath the bed. The next night, after Kevin's mom had fed him dinner and left, Toby popped out once more. This time, he held a wooden box in his hands. "Want to learn to juggle?" he asked. "Here, take these. Toss them in the air and catch them. These are perfect for learning." Toby opened the box and pulled out 5 sharp, gleaming knives. He offered them to Kevin. Kevin's eyes widened in fear. "I'm not allowed to touch stuff like that," he said. "If my mom or dad find out I played with knives or even touched them, they'll be really mad. I'll get in big trouble." Toby scowled, slammed the knives back into the box, and with one quick motion, darted under the bed and disappeared again. That night, Kevin barely slept. Nightmares tore through his mind. Dreamed of children jumping out of windows, swallowing shards of glass, juggling blades, being called into the woods, voices turning into echoes, lost somewhere deep among the trees. The next morning, Kevin's mom told him the house would be sold and they were leaving soon. Kevin stepped outside, and there was Toby, already waiting for him on the porch. "I want to show you something," Toby said. "You've earned it?" They walked into the forest along a narrow trail where the sunlight barely broke through the thick canopy. The trees whispered in their own language. Eventually, they reached a fallen tree, and Toby stopped. "This is where the path begins. Only the chosen makes it to the end. You're not ready. However, one day, you'll come back." And Kevin did come back. Years passed. A wife, children, a job, a life like anyone else's. Then one day, while passing through Wyoming on a work trip, he found himself near Sheridan again. The town looked almost the same, except Uncle Bill's house was gone. A long time ago, there had been a fire. The house burned to the ground. All that remained was a blackened foundation and some charred beams. That's when he remembered the trail Toby had once shown him. He made his way into the woods, following the same path. One step, then another. The branches seemed to reach out toward him, whispering, "You've come back." He walked about 300 feet until he reached a clearing. In the middle was an old cemetery. The headstones were small, weather-worn, and covered in moss. They were all children's graves, and for a moment, he thought he saw his own name on one of them. He turned, and in the shadows between the trees, he glimpsed a familiar shape: round eyes, upright ears,